Hello, innovative teachers, and welcome for another episode of our Mastermind series. Today we have Brooke Brown from Teach Outside the Box, and we're so excited to chat with her today and hear about all her creative and amazing ideas. So Brooke, if you wouldn't mind introducing yourself and telling us a little bit about you.
Absolutely. Well, first of all, thank you guys so much for having me. I always look forward to an opportunity to connect with other STEM educators. So thank you. I'm honored that you asked me to be a part of your podcast. So my name is Brooke Brown. I am in Norman, Oklahoma, and this is my 17th year of teaching. I am currently a gifted resource coordinator for kindergarten through second grade, but I'm serving third graders this year as well. I am all virtual this year, missing the classroom tremendously, but also getting to reach kids in an entirely new and innovative way. And I'm already getting really close to them in different ways in the different schools in my district. And it's been a challenge for sure. Like I said, I miss my classroom, but I'm grateful to still be teaching. I also write the blog on teachoutsidethebox.com, and I create STEM and makerspace and coding resources for elementary students.
So lovely. It's all packaged so nice and neat. That was good. So you mentioned you've been teaching for a while. What led you into your STEM role? Like, how did you get to where you're at?
So 7 years ago is when I stepped into this gifted and talented role. And at that time, STEM was kind of starting to gain momentum in the elementary field, but it wasn't so much in the early childhood field. So when I would try to find resources specifically for first and second grade, I would have to find upper grade resources and try to make them work with littles. And if you've ever taught the littles, you know that they are very unique in their learning styles and their abilities. Something that would work in a fifth grade classroom may be a complete disaster in a first grade classroom. So that is when I kind of started creating my own resources, because I knew exactly how first graders can handle their materials, exactly what science concepts and math concepts they need to know at that age. So that was kind of when I really started diving into STEM. And the more I did it with my kids, the more that collaborative piece really spoke to me, the problem solving, the overcoming failure. It became my favorite subject to teach. And so in turn, it kind of became my kids too. And STEM is not the only thing I teach with gifted and talented, but it's by far my favorite. And then over the years, I've learned to integrate literacy more. And I feel like I've gotten better at teaching STEM through experience. Like I've grown and learned right along with my students. I feel like you guys probably feel similarly, right? That it is a learning process. So the longer you do it, the more fun and the easier it gets.
Definitely.
I love how you said that too, because I feel like that's such a big thing when it comes to like the STEM world. People think like, well, you got to be certified or you have to really know how, but it's like one of those things I feel like you dive in. And like, I still remember some of the first lessons I taught, like I was like, oh man, that did not go as well as I thought it was going to go. But like you kind of learn and grow with the kids. And a lot of times they start asking questions. And then before you know it, you're on different topics and different things you're learning about for sure.
For sure.
And that's one thing I see all the time, I feel like.
Well, I mean, sometimes a lesson could go in a completely different direction depending on how you set it up for your kids, depending on like the levels of perseverance that they're used to, depending on the age. But even some of my favorite lessons that I've done with my students, they weren't necessarily successful at the very end, but the learning process was really powerful for them. And then ended up being more memorable for them when they came back to it later on. They would remember, oh, remember this time that we had to try all of these times and we still didn't get it by the end, but we got really close. And it's those kind of meaningful learning experiences that stick with them too.
So as we're kind of like going on here with this, and I love how you said you use STEM, you know, all those different things for gifted and talented. But as far as like just concentrating on STEM, what is like one thing you've seen in your room that you're like, wow, it was kind of like that wow moment for you?
It would have to be the collaborative piece for me, for just because the longer I've taught, the more I see kind of these lack of general, I would call them people smarts in my room. Problem solving, getting along, sharing, showing empathy, all of these things that require you to kind of look outside yourself. And STEM, when they're working in small groups, when they're working in partners, not only do they have to plan something together and agree on something in their group, they have to build together, they have to improve together, they have to fail together, and then ultimately they get to hopefully succeed together at the end of that challenge. And I think for me, it was just like that magical aha moment for them every time we got through a challenge together. It just was a different type of experience than you would see coming from a general ed classroom for 10 years, especially. and I love teaching science in the general ed classroom, but this had this extra level. STEM had this extra hands-on engineering component to it that to me was just magic from the very beginning.
Mm-hmm. And I love how you said too, like those, because I've always told my principal administrator that like the skills that are taught in STEM are like lost skills, like collaborative problem solving. Those are the skills that they're going to use in every workforce, and seeing them use them. And I feel like, and you can like, kind of give me what you think here, but I feel like as they kind of do them more, those skills just increase and increase every year, especially when you see them from first grade to second grade, when you have multiple grade levels.
Absolutely. Like I love seeing how far they come from kindergartners when I qualify them in kindergarten coming to, and they get to a point in second grade where I don't want them to leave me because they've come so far. And I think about, oh my God, I remember that you wouldn't share your toothpicks with your friend back in kindergarten. And I talk to kindergarten teachers a lot about that. And that is when I push in to do whole class lessons in kindergarten. That's one of the biggest challenges is they want to do their own project. They don't want to share the materials that are there. But then it gets kind of contagious in the early childhood classroom. All of a sudden they realize if we put this together, we can make something even cooler. And then you look up and the entire table has put their materials together to create something even better. And yeah, there's pros and cons with early child, but there's so many magical components that make it so rewarding to teach.
And I love how you use those as your examples too, because like for me, when I started with my position, like my story, I kind of like got pushed into a brand new STEM program, and they're like, hey, you need to write all the curriculum for it. And I actually wrote curriculum for like 3rd through 6th grade. And then I actually found you on TBT. And that's when I bought, like, oh, this is how you do the younger stuff. So like for me, you were a person that inspired me. So to hear you talk about the younger elementary and how they were affected, now, kind of shows in my room a little bit, and I'm getting better and better. But when people ask me, I'm like, K1 and 2 is a whole different ball game. I would say all the time. Different ball game, but still think it can be done, and I still think it should be done, but it's just how we go about it for sure.
And see, I have great admiration for my teammate that does, and like you, that specialize in the big kids, because I don't want to say they scare me. They don't scare me. 3rd grade is a happy place for me too. And my daughter's in 4th grade. So, I mean, they're capable of so much though. That to me is what's incredible about the big ones. But well, thank you for your support of my work with the little ones.
Yeah, I had to tell you that part. I was going to tell you that part earlier because I remember still when I got hired on, I was like, I can't write this many lesson plans in like a week. And they were asking a lot of me, and I was like, I have to buy just a couple grade levels on TPT just to get through this first year. And then I was like, oh, this stuff's awesome. And then
thank you.
Crazy that it's come to this and everything. So that also made me excited that we got interviewed because of that. But yeah, kindergarten and 1st and 2nd. Oh, that's always been a challenge for me. So
simplify that. I learned that they don't need 10 different materials to choose from. Then you're going to have to prep them, and then it's mass chaos. Like they could do so much with so little in kindergarten, 1st and 2nd grade.
And would you say, like, before we go on kind of the next question, that's kind of like the bigger problems you would see with teachers that are trying to do STEM? They try to maybe make it a little too complicated.
And I also, something I learned really quickly coming from the general ed classroom to my role now is that, especially back then, there weren't a lot of things designated specifically for STEM. You couldn't buy things and, manipulatives and that said, use this for STEM challenges. But what I did have is a ton of math manipulatives on hand. So I knew my kids were going to build with them anyway. They did it in the general ed classroom. So I use math manipulatives for just about every kind of challenge that I do. I pull out base 10 blocks and dominoes because I didn't have the resources at that time, and I've never really let that go. Those are materials that the kids love to create with anyway, and that's what's in STEM bins, and then we use them for challenges as well. But yes, that is something I learned very, very quickly with the young ones, is overcomplicating things. Number one, not setting them up to be like successful with building that background knowledge enough before we started and just giving them the materials, but also simplifying was something that I learned very quickly was so important for the young ones.
Right. Man, I love that.
So you have your STEM bins, which, like Spencer, when I started with STEM 3 years ago, I also purchased some of your items for stations, your STEM bin images, which are great. So you talk about the manipulatives and all of that. If a classroom teacher is super interested in STEM, aside from the manipulatives, are there anything else you would recommend that they start with, like a lesson or materials that are some go-to things?
So for general ed teachers specifically, and just teachers new to STEM in general, usually literacy is an easy gateway and kind of an easy hook to start off the STEM challenge. So teachers that may be hesitant to try STEM in their classrooms may already have this amazing literacy unit with a picture book, right? And if you can show them, oh, the great culmination would be tying in these science and math skills and some engineering by doing the STEM challenge that goes with the book. That can be a really easy hook, and teachers, once they try it, and they see how powerful and wonderful it can be for their students and for their well-being and for their collaborative skills, then they typically want to do more. But other than, as far as materials go, other than math manipulatives, I love really simple things like Play-Doh, paper goods we use all the time, mini cups, popsicle sticks, kind of your classic things. Anything that can be reused is also very helpful for most teachers, because we don't have a lot of time. We don't have to spend money out of our own pockets to go replenish things. So anything in a maker environment or a STEM classroom that you can reuse is a win-win for me.
Oh, definitely. That's been a tricky part too with COVID. Like, I totally bank on those reusables. And so just how to shift what I could use for this class and maybe use something different for another class. So I totally agree with that reusable stuff. And it's like, okay, how can I use maybe more cardboard this year, like the paper goods that you mentioned, or I might be making my own Play-Doh. I don't know. And they could take that home. We'll see. That KitchenAid might get some use. Dust off that KitchenAid.
That's like, I've seen lots of teachers do that. That's actually really like making salt dough and Play-Doh and sending it home. It's a really good idea.
We'll see what happens.
I like too how you talked about the literacy aspect, because a lot of times, especially on this podcast, we have a lot of people reach out to us and they're like, well, I don't want to use STEM during, my science time. Could I tie it into like literacy? And then I feel like that's one of the biggest, and it's like, yes, you can. Like, that's
absolutely,
because there's going to be a story and there's going to be a problem in the story. We'll stop it there and have your kids, think about that problem and actually like try to solve that problem from a book. I've seen you do that dozens of times on your, your products or your store. And I know I've done it, Naomi's done it. And it's so much fun too, because I think it really helps with the child's literacy skills, their comprehension, the understanding of the story. And I just feel like that's such a big way that you can add like STEM components into another subject.
For sure. And and to me, it's also a big time saver. Like, a lot of teachers are, very crunched on time. And my kindergarten push-in lessons are only 40 minutes. But every time, almost every lesson I do with them, I have a picture book, and we go straight into the STEM challenge after that. And I'll pick my more simple ones, of course, because it's not much time, but it is like the perfect amount of time for kindergartners to focus on a read aloud, transition to something hands-on, and then it's easy to clean up afterwards. I've done that for several years. And so if you're looking for a way to integrate lots of different subject areas and lots of different standards in a short amount of time, it's the way to go, for sure.
Yes. I love that. And I love adding literacy, especially with the younger kids too, because I feel like they love it, talking about the younger ones. So, as far as if, you were to sit down with a group of teachers that were just graduated, what advice would you be giving them if they're wanting to get into STEM specifically?
So still, this many years into teaching, it's so important to learn from the experts and the amazing teachers around you. What's great is the longer I've taught, that my network has grown exponentially to all of these pockets of online communities, right? So my first year teacher specifically, spending time with other teachers who are passionate about STEM, observing them in the classroom, that's going to be some of the most powerful professional development you'll ever experience. And I know fresh out of college, they have some experience, but really, really connecting with those STEM experts and those teachers that are kind of the pioneers in their building when it comes to implementing STEM on a more regular basis, spending time in their classrooms, joining professional networks online, on Twitter, joining Facebook groups like STEM teachers groups. Now with, the virtual conferences, it's really opened a lot of doors for presenters and for teachers all over the world to connect in a way that maybe they couldn't in a in-person conference because they couldn't attend or it wasn't near them. So attending STEMCon, our virtual conference that we started that will continue hopefully for many years after this one, would be something I would recommend. I wrote down some stuff about, let me see if there's anything else. Online PLCs. Really, just like anything else, I've always said that, or someone told me once, that you become like the five people that you surround yourself with, right? And I feel like that is true not only in your personal life, but in your professional life. And my current school that I teach in is I credit for making me the teacher that I am, because I was put on a team with these teachers that were absolutely incredible in their own individual ways. And anytime new teachers can surround themselves with that type of expertise and positivity, and I think we all get better with it. Rising tide lifts all boats. So
yeah, and I feel like too, I love that you touched on so many different ways, and like the STEM con and those different conferences too, because a lot of times like a classroom teacher, they're always like, I don't know if I want to do it. But I feel like once someone goes to something like that, they're like all in. Like I know I've spoken at many conferences, like STEM ones, where people are like, oh, I'm so glad you spoke, and now I really want to try this, this, and this. And it gets them excited about teaching again. And if you surround yourself with those kind of people too, it makes you want to be there, and not want, not that teacher burnout that we all talk about, so often. So that always helps too with that kind of stuff.
For finding your people. That is, I mean, science conferences are my favorite, because just presenting to other science teachers and collaborating, we just think a little bit differently about things. I call myself a science nerd, and I'm very proud of it. But going to be with my people and to, share those common passions and ways to make STEM better. And it definitely makes us all better.
It does, for sure.
Well, and that's a big thing with this podcast too. We don't typically interview for all of our episodes, but we just wanted other teachers, especially during this time, to connect in a different way, even if it's through listening. And for us to chat with you, I mean, we're thrilled that we're learning so much also.
Oh yeah.
But
I got my little notepad here. I'm writing all kinds of stuff.
I still learn I'll do the same lesson for 4 years with a group of kids, and I'll learn something completely new every year. And I think you never really stop growing in ways to make, especially the engineering design process, ways to make it a little bit deeper and a little bit more meaningful for your kids. And that's the best part of it, though, always growing.
Right.
With your teaching online right now, are there any lessons that you've kept and that are working well, or any tips or advice that you might give? Because some of us might have to go to teaching online and teaching STEM and hands-on. What have you found that's been successful for you?
So some of them have been some of my lessons I've used for years, and we've just kind of adapted them with new digital components. So we're using Seesaw. So a lot of times things that might be made in Google Drive or a different platform don't play well with Seesaw.
Yep.
So I've had to kind of recreate some things that work well for my kids. We started, Katie King and I do Storybook STEM together, and we started a digital plus printable bundle earlier in the summer with 10 different books. And the great thing about connecting STEM with storybooks is that I feel like every month there are more books coming out that have that amazing engineering connection. Diverse characters. I mean, I feel like they're getting better. So we're always looking for ways to incorporate those new STEM books into our lessons. And so we've been using a lot of those. I keep it really simple with anything hands-on that is at home. So I don't limit them to I give suggested materials, but I do not limit their materials, because depending on their home environment, it may be very different. But it also allows for a lot of creativity. It allows for them to really use their resources, think about what they have on hand that they could use to solve a problem, which, if you think about it, is almost even a little bit more meaningful than being in a classroom. They have to be more resourceful and more creative. But I use a lot of consumables, paper rolls and empty boxes and Play-Doh and anything they can build with. If I ask them to build with something, I keep it really, really simple. And so far it's been working well. I mean, it's definitely, sometimes it misses that magic of the classroom, but I've been really impressed to see what my kids are able to do in their home environments.
Do you tell them beforehand, like, hey, oh, my lights went dark, so people watching. Do you ever say, like, hey, you need to get these materials ready before we meet, or do you give them time to go search?
Yes. So I email my parents. I have like a weekly communication with them. And then I also have little weekly check-in meetings, like a Google Meet. And then I tell them then, okay, next week, this is what we're going to do. Start gathering these materials. But I try not to, just because I'm a mom, I have my kids at home with me as well. I try not to stress out the families with any sort of complicated lessons, because a lot of times STEM is kind of this extra, right? They're going to be doing their reading and their math. Virtual work first. It's going to kind of take that priority, but I want them to want to do the activities that I assign. So I try to kind of set that stage and get them excited, but keep it simple enough to where they're still going to want to participate and be motivated to try it.
I love how too you talked about the different materials like that, because I was doing the same thing with my kids and they thought that was so cool because they would be like, hey, could I use this at my house? And I'm like, yeah, let's try it and see what happens. So when we were remote, which I mean, we're in person now, but when we were remote, that was something I did too. And I thought it worked really well and the kids really enjoyed it. And like you said, it makes it fun. You know, a lot of that stuff they have to do online is good, but some of it I feel like obviously isn't ideal and they don't like it. So STEM's a way that they can kind of release, be creative, and learn a little bit.
For sure. And they, a lot of times when they can create something, they're so proud, they want to share it with someone. So I always make sure to add in, add a photo or add a video of this in action or explain this to me. And that's usually my favorite part when I look at their work is their video of them explaining their chain reaction. Or if one time they had to create an invention that solved a problem and their video was almost like an advertisement for their
That's cool.
it was there. I could have watched those all day. I love seeing their kind of creativity shine through, but I've been so impressed with what they've come up with
Do you have them just insert the video, or do they use like Flipgrid or something?
Well, now my daughter's favorite thing in the world is Flipgrid, and I'm a big fan.
My kids are too, and I tell them you can upload a video or you can use Flipgrid if you want to. And they always
and that, like, especially in the virtual learning world that we've all been kind of thrown into, it has been incredible. And Seesaw, they can insert their video right there on the side, or their photo of their, so I put a slide and give them instructions there. But I like how we have lots of different options for them to share their work. I think that's kind of, to me, that is kind of the icing on the cake and kind of a way to hold them a little bit more accountable for their work too. But always also super fun.
Right. Yeah. So as we're kind of closing up here, one thing we like to kind of do at the end is there any like specific projects you're working on, or specific maybe blogs or anything like that you kind of want to share? So share those things, and then how our listeners could also connect with you, because we always want as many people as we can connect with you, because I know you made my life easier and you made me passionate about STEM. So we want that for our listeners now.
Of course. So something that has recently come about that I'm very excited about, you may have kind of seen it on social media circulating, is I recently partnered with St. Jude. St. Jude has a team of teacher ambassadors. There are 5 of us, and they were wanting to kind of revive one of their fundraising programs, kind of pivoting away from only math to more of a STEM focus. And so I got to partner with them and help them write their curriculum for their new program. It's called the St. Jude Epic Challenge. And all the materials are free. You can download them. And so it's a 5-day program. You can either do it one a day for a week, or you can do it all in one day.
Awesome.
And it's very simple. Your kids are going to design something to help the kids of St. Jude. So it could be affectively, it could be physically, it could be socially, it could be emotionally, really adding in that empathy piece that I think is kind of the secret sauce to a wonderful engineering challenge, and allowing them to look outside themselves and help somebody in need. And they've got everything set up for you. Your kids can, the printable materials for the teachers, and then also materials to send home to your parents as well. But that is all. If you Google St. Jude Epic Challenge, the very first hit, it'll come up with all the materials that you need. EPIC actually stands for experimenting, prototyping, inventing, and creating. So
we can link it. We'll link it in the show notes.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
But I'm very proud that I got to be a part of that. And if you're looking for something that you can use either in the classroom or virtually, it would be a great thing to have to expose your kids to. So.
Sure. As far as like Instagram, Facebook, all those, are you the same one for all those?
Yes.
Or?
So on Instagram, I'm Teach Outside the Box, and same as Facebook, Teach Outside the Box, and then teachoutsidethebox.com is my website. On Teachers Pay Teachers, I'm Brooke Brown, Teach Outside the Box, and Twitter, it's Brooke Brown, TOTB.
Okay, nice. Yes, so thank you so much, Brooke, for joining us. I know this is one that we've all been looking forward to on the podcast. So
I'm honored that you asked me, and I'm excited to connect with other STEM educators. So thank you very much for having me.
All right. Thank you, Innovative Teachers, for tuning in for another great episode. If you are looking for easy to use resources, please check out Brooke, Naomi, me, and also check out our exclusive Innovative Teachers Patreon group as we upload things there monthly. Thank you, and we can't wait for another great episode with you.